I came out after training to a little detachment called Boston Bar in the Fraser Canyon, and I was still 19 years of age. Now, Boston Bar, in those days, the #1 highway which ran through there was very, very narrow and very treacherous, very dangerous, in fact. So my year there at Boston Bar was probably every other day we'd have some sort of a terrible accident there, particularly in the fall when the hunters started heading up island to hunt for moose and elk and so on. They would stock up with ammunition and booze, get behind the wheel of the car, and all they go into the interior. And when they hit that Fraser Canyon, even at that time of year, it could be very, very, very treacherous road-wise, road surface-wise. But the biggest hazard was the fact that in many places it was only 10 feet wide. The buses and the trucks that went through there often had to jockey their way through China Bar, which is probably the worst part of the highway. And often cars would go over that bank down onto the railway tracks about 400 feet below. Sometimes they'd bounce off the railway tracks and go all the way down to the river, which would be about 1,500 feet. And you can imagine the terrible mess it would make. So I, as a 19-year-old, I spent a lot of time bringing bodies up from down below and trying to get some of them off to the hospital. The nearest one was in Hope. And in those days, they didn't give us any real rescue equipment. We had a stretcher, we had a police car, and it had no radio. There was no radio contact. Because it was a two-man detachment, I worked alone an awful lot of the time. And I can still remember out at one stretch of the road called 9 Mile Canyon. I came along, just driving that road, and I noticed tracks going out off the road. I thought, oh my Lord, there's another problem here. So I stopped the police car, got out, and sure enough, down below another 500 or 600 feet, into the creek was this car. It was still smoking and steam rising from it. I had a lot of trouble getting down there, and on the way down, I had to rappel down with some rope. There were brains splattered against the side of the bank, and so I climbed back up again, and I could see that there was going to be a fatality down there. Brought the stretcher and other accoutrements and lowered that and then climbed down myself. But now there's no real way to get the body back to the highway except to put it into or onto the stretcher and float it ahead of me. I'm walking, knee deep with my breeches and boots and spurs in the creek and floating this body ahead of me till we got to a railway trestle that was low enough that I could, and by this time I had some help to get the body up to the surface and carry it away. But there were a lot of experiences like that at Boston Bar.